adding your vibes to the tribes through liking, sharing, raving, ranting, whatever you like to do. This is going to be a nice little nugget about how everybody loves you. And I know it can seem crazy because I mean, especially if you don't, if you are like me and you follow the quote of a friend to everybody is a friend to no one, and you recognize that you don't like everybody and not everybody likes you, it can seem like how could it be possible that everybody loves me? And especially because it feels like a lot of the collective is working on self-worth stuff right now. Wow, look at that, 9:11 on the clock, 43 on that clock. So I'm right. I'm right and you're right. Not I'm right and you're wrong, just we're all right. Anyways, what I want to briefly talk about is how I could say everybody loves you, and it's true. And what I was actually thinking about is how we can oftentimes find ourselves in dynamics where somebody we love very much is not reciprocating love to us. And it can be a parent, it could be a child, it could be a lover, it could be an ex, it could be friends. And oftentimes we take that as a personal self worth hit, especially when we try to tell them, hey, I feel hurt by the way that you're treating me. And they don't respond well, or they respond darkly, I suppose, for lack of a better way to put it. And the thing is that when people respond that way, when they're not reciprocating love, when they're blaming you, when they're um, avoiding you, when they're stonewalling, doing things like that, the thing is, it's not that they don't love you, it's that they don't love themselves. And we can only love others to the degree that we can love ourselves. And that's going to be something I think I'm going to I want to say harp on it, but that's got negative connotations. But when I say harp on it, I mean like I'm going to pull out my harp, and I'm going to harp on this whole ideal about self-love, especially because if you're in the twin flame journey in particular, which has been a large part of my content so far, it's all about self-love and self-worth. We often misconstrue it that it's about loving another or finding our ultimate true love. That is included in there, though the reason why we get that is because we go through this journey of learning self-love, genuinely, full on. Like, you literally cannot have your twin flame until you can love yourself, and you can only have them to the degree to which you can love yourself and to which they can love themselves. And I know that that is also the way that it works in almost every other type of relationship that we have. We can only have love to the degree that we give ourselves love. That's the thing. So if others are not showing you love, it's not because they don't love you, it's because they don't love themselves. And it can be in that moment, it could be long term, it can, all sorts of things. So, and it's important to know this because it helps to create a healthy level of disassociation when others are not showing us love. Like, say we need to have some healthy boundaries with people who are being disrespectful to us, who are not, they're not grateful for our, let's see, it's funny because I don't want to lay this out as in like everybody should always be grateful for everything that you do, which I mean, yeah, in general, you should feel grateful for the things that people do for you, but there are plenty of times that people do things that seem like something we should feel grateful for and it's really not. But again, that gets tied back to how much love they have for themselves, because if they're tricking you or manipulating you, whether intentionally or on purpose, it's because of a lack of self-love. Because a lot of people get into relationships not because they genuinely like love the person and really want to be with them. They do it because they're afraid to be alone. And then it really starts to show in, look at actions and words. And if the actions and the words are not consistently consistent with each other, because they're not always going to be consistent, but if they're not generally consistent, then they have challenges with self-worth. And that's why there's not a consistent, unconditionally loving vibe going on between the two of you. But the same thing is true of you, because anyone, most especially that you're in a romantic dynamic with, you reflect them. So if they have self-worth issues, so do you. And a lot of times I notice we tend to do this thing to where we have a lack of self-love going on. And so then we give and give and give and give to relationships, or or we pull away and give to the financial aspects of relationships, or the family, like say the parenting aspects or things like that. And then we get upset when we're not seeing reciprocation or understanding of, like, it basically, with we usually don't have the words to say I'm having trouble loving myself, and that's giving me big challenges in loving you. And we want other people to be very empathetic and understanding that we're just having a problem loving ourselves, and it's nothing to do with the other person. But then we get mad that they don't just already intuit that, and we don't see that, well, duh, because right now our partner is reflecting us, and so they're having lack of self-worth, and they're having trouble loving themselves, and so that gives the trouble showing their love to us, and then we do the same thing, and then, bam, we butt heads. In any case, those are not moments to start, like, really cracking down on the other person. Yes, a lot of those times you need to have not strong boundaries, just not weak boundaries. If somebody's having trouble loving themselves, and it's really showing through, like, say, disrespectful behavior towards you, you got to have a stronger ability to love yourself. And sometimes that means including boundaries, of having space, of having, control over your own communication with them, things like that. And you got to have really good self-worth in order to have, well, not to, I don't want to say you have to have good self-worth to have healthy boundaries, but they tend to go hand in hand. Because when we don't love ourselves, our boundaries are usually a mixture of far too weak and porous and far too strict and hard. And healthy boundaries are in the middle. A healthy boundary is often not even a forever boundary, unless you're interacting with somebody else who's on definitely different vibrations to you, and you and or they have some really, really deep self-worth stuff to work on. Either way, I want to extend this. It's still going to be a short nugget, but I want to even say people who, like, I want people who even seem hateful towards you, they love you too. The reason that they are hateful towards you, that say they, I'm talking like, oh, I don't know, say you're with someone and their ex really, really hates you, um, or you have an ex who really hates you, or you have a boss who just that's what the impression of their energy gives towards you. They're intentionally sabotaging things, or they've told you that they don't like you, or things like that. The funny thing is that it's only for a few reasons that they're doing that, and it actually leads back to the fact that they do love you. And it doesn't necessarily mean romantically, but just in a general love sense, is that either you trigger them, and like, if it's somebody who's, I want to say, more on the healed end, it's because you're triggering them to see old versions of themselves. Or if they're more on the unhealed end of things, it's because you're triggering what they want to see in themselves and don't. And that makes them feel like they're inadequate or not as good, or things like that. That's a lot of times where, if you get into a situation with somebody to where you give them some feedback, and your life's going pretty good, and you're actually being quite genuine, and you're not being mean or anything. You really, you want to help, or you, I don't know, it doesn't have to be help, but maybe you have some feedback for them, and they get upset about it. It's not necessarily even because the feedback was unnecessary or that it was bad. It's because they're looking at you and saying, well, you think you're better than everyone else. What they're really saying is, I think that you're better than me, and it's triggering me. And same thing with, well, just with anything in life. So in fact, the irony is, most people think that the opposite of love is hate. It's not. In order to hate, you have to have love. It's apathy that is the opposite of both of those. It's genuinely not caring, not having any interest in. And the irony is typically, even when we're acting apathetic, when we're like, I don't care about them at all, well, one, think about, the universe doesn't take contractions. So when you say, I don't care about so and so, you're saying, I care about so and so to the universe. So really, genuinely being apathetic means that they don't come up in conversation, they don't come up in your mind, they're not, The energy isn't there. You're just like apathy is lack of feeling, like lack of feeling towards somebody. And that's actually, I mean, even that is a sign that somebody does love you. There's just you're not in the vibe at all. You're not there because you're not triggering them in any way. And triggering doesn't have to be negative. I know it comes from the context of like PTSD, but triggering can you can it can also be considered inspiring. Triggering, inspiring, you know. And in any case, when you have somebody who's like bullying you or trying to control you or trying to do those things, usually they do love you. It's simply that they don't have self love. And so they feel like when we don't have self love, we typically end up in the narcissistic lower vibe dimensions. And it feels like, if you look into theory of mind, in the lower vibes, it's we typically don't recognize that we see everybody else as some part of ourselves. We project. And depending on what that other person is doing, because that person has free will, we see various parts of ourselves. Now, if that person is doing better than we are and we don't have really good self love, then we see how we compare. We see how we are not doing as well as they are, rather than just seeing that they're doing well and being like, I'm so happy for them that they're doing well. We see that we are not doing well and we don't like that. And so we want to be upset with them for doing better than us when we're really not upset at them. We're upset at ourselves because we're not, practicing enough gratitude or self discipline, or we have negative, we have stinking thinking going on. And that triggers us. Same thing with if somebody's in, lower vibes than us. If we're especially not healed, then we want to be resentful towards them because they're not treating us the way that we want to be treated or treating us the way that we treat them, things like that. When you really get into the higher healing levels, you just recognize that they're having trouble loving themselves. And yeah, sometimes you have to set healthy boundaries, but there's no reason to take it personally, because even if it is personal, it's not personal. The only time that people act in unloving ways is when they're having trouble loving themselves. I'm just going to say 100%. That's the only time. Because when people have healthy self-love, then more, yeah, they might have some dark moments. We're humans. We like the contrast, but more consistently than not over time, they're going to show you respect and value and reciprocity because they have secure self love, self respect. There's no reason to be upset with you. Unless you, I mean, even if you really have a dark moment and you do something with them, yeah, like there may be some triggering in those moments, but they're going to recognize you're human too. They're human too. How would they want to be treated if they had, a dark night of soul moment, etc. But when we don't have good self love, self worth, we're not sure how to get there. A lot of times, if you're really in the dark spaces, you don't even know that that is a possibility, and you can't really fault someone for not knowing how to do something that they don't even know exists. In fact, Maverick did a beautiful thing that had to do with Easter that talked about what is it? I think there's a part in the Bible where, like, I don't remember if it was Jesus or not, but they were talking about like punishing the Romans and things like that. And the Lord said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And it was a beautiful. I definitely recommend you go listen to her video. It was from last night. It was beautiful, and it talked about Good Friday and stuff. And it really is important. I might do my own divine nugget about that later, but it is important to recognize when people are, you know, they're being very low vibe to you. Oftentimes they don't recognize who they are and how powerful they are and how their words and energy and stuff really has an impact on you, and they most definitely do not really understand who you are, either to them or to the rest of the world or anything like that. They're not doing it because they don't see love in you. It's because they don't see love in themselves, and that reflects in how they treat everybody else. And it most certainly isn't just you. Like, even if all you can see, like if they're projecting the image that they're giving everybody else priority attention or treating everyone else respectfully and not treating you that way, no, that's a lie. We very consistently treat others the way that we treat ourselves. And if somebody is saying mean things to you or not giving you attention that you feel like is well, I'm not gonna say that you need, because you shouldn't need attention from other people, but if they're, if they're in general acting low vibe towards you, they're acting low vibe towards everybody because they're acting low vibe towards themselves. That's why the, you know, with anything in life, and especially with manifestation and love, the way you treat yourself is the most important thing. The relationship with you and you is the most important thing, and you should give priority to that. All right, anyways, I'm going to leave this here. If you have any questions or you want to challenge me with this Aries energy, go for it. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.